Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Other people can catch up with us. We're going to revisit form changes that we started last Wednesday. A couple housekeeping items here. Remember that NVAR is switching over to Docs Plus. If you have anything saved in the system, you have to transfer it over. Emmett Dingley has done an excellent presentation on that. You can find it on our website, I'm sure. But anything that you want saved from the current system, you need to have out of there by January 1. Also, these forms that we are discussing, they take effect 1/1/2021. And so if you write a contract today, you will be using the old forms all the way up till January 1. So if you go to a manager and discuss it, a case that you wrote during that time period, make sure that everybody's on the same page. Look at the bottom of your form. You will see a form number and you will see an effective date. So anything that you use prior, it would be interpreted under the old rules, not the new information that we're talking about. Everyone okay with that? Good. I'd like to also thank everybody for your kind comments about my induction into the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors Hall of Fame. I do appreciate it. Too many people for me to try to get back to all at one time, but I will try to reach everybody and thank you.
Well deserved award.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Emmett. I'm going to start with the contract form. Residential sales contract form K1321. The only real change to this, if you go to page 39, paragraph 12, and that's additions. That's the additional addendum forms you use. They have added the new home sales addendum. We will take a look briefly at that today. Remembering that the new home sales addendum will replace the new home sales contract, which means excuse me, you will use the regular sales contract and add the new home sales addendum. Boy, something in here got me. Excuse me. After January 1, you will use your residential sales contract plus the addendum form. Okay. Prior to that, we do have a new home sales contract form that you use. Okay. The other thing I want to point out here is extension of review period for condo resale certificate in POA. That is paragraph 8 and 9 of our contract. The POA Act changed a little bit in that the period for review of documents can be extended an additional 4 days with the written addendum. So if you're going to ask for the additional 4 days, you can do it up front as part of the contract, or you can ask for it while the contract's going on. You can ask for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, maximum additional 4 days. But that is an addendum to the contract. Seller does not have to agree to that. Okay. So that is an option. If you think your buyer needs more than 3 days to review 1,000-page documents, you can request it. The other thing I want to point out about this paragraph is the statute. Remember, the statute for Virginia for POA and condo, they're identical now. They just call the packages something different, but it's 37 pages long, okay? The whole statute is 37 pages long. The only thing that's included in this sales contract is the mandatory language required by that statute. So even though it might not show up here in a contract, the whole law is still in effect. I have a lot of agents say, well, for instance, you have to wait for the documents to be delivered before you have the 3-day right of rescission. That's not what our statute says. It says anytime up to me receiving the documents or 3 days after receiving them or receiving a notice that they won't be available, I have the right to void. I could void my contract the very next day because of POA and condo. Okay, so there's 37 pages of it. I believe we went through a good part of it, but if you want to know what's in the statute, a good review of it, there is a new form put out by NVAR that you use with buyers. And I recommend you use this form with buyers. I don't have it in front of me, but it's understanding your rights under the POA and Condo Act. Okay, it's an actual form that you get your buyer to sign, and it goes over the 19 things that have to be in a complete package. It goes over your right of rescission. It covers the main points of the statute. Okay, so buyers, buyer agents, please use that with your buyers. I mean, have it in your folder to protect yourself. That way you can acknowledge that you've gone over everything. Okay. I also use it with sellers to give them an idea of what is necessary. It's something you keep in your package. It's not something that is part of the sales contract.
Okay. Larry, it means we have to send the addendum to the seller to extend the time for reviewing of the documents.
Correct. You could add it, and that's why it's a checkbox under paragraph 39, okay, that you sent that addendum form, or you could send it later. Now, make sure you understand, this does not extend the time period for receiving the documents, okay? The statute says the seller must deliver the documents within 14 days, not business days, 14 days after written request for the documents, okay? If they're not delivered in that 14-day time period after receipt of the written request by the POA or condo association management company, then they're deemed to be not available, and technically your 3 days start to kill your contract. So you can use this addendum to extend it up to 4 days after receipt, or you cannot use it to shorten the time period. It's written in our statute. It's not negotiable. Okay, and remember, if your buyer receives anything, one part of that packet, the time is started. Okay, so this, there is no signing an addendum where everybody agrees that the time doesn't start until we receive all 19 items. It's not negotiable. It's written in our statute. It's in stone. Don't try to do that. Okay?
So Larry,
Yes.
regarding the extension, if you need to extend it to 4 days, are you better off waiting until the 3rd day to ask for the extension? Because does the 4th day begin at the end of the 3rd automatically, or does it begin at the date that you're asking for the extension?
No, if you ask for the extension, so you have 3 days, at midnight on that 3rd day, you no longer have any time. But if you have that written addendum agreed to on that 3rd day, now you have an additional 4 days, total of 7. Okay.
Right. So you're better off asking for it on the 3rd day than you are asking for it on the 1st or the 2nd.
Well, no. The time period for extension wouldn't start until after your 3rd day anyway.
Okay.
Okay. So you can have up to a total of 7 days.
Okay.
And if
Okay,
it's mailed, it's a total of 10 days because mail is 6 days after postmark.
okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, good. So that's the changes to your sales contract. Okay, any questions about that?
Larry,
Okay.
quick question on that. So, uh, the buyer is waiting for the docs, but they never received them. But still, the buyer can cancel the contract by quoting the HOA docs. So the other party may ask, "Hey, we never sent you the HOA docs. How can you use the HOA docs to cancel the contract?"
Because the statute allows it. Okay, it's written in the other 37 pages of the statute. Okay, and remember, the only required language, this is required language in paragraph 8 or 9. The statute actually requires that to be in the contract. That's the only thing it requires. If they included all 37 pages of the act, how many pages would our sales contract be? So the reason they pulled out, you might remember, it used to be a page and a half long for each one of these. They pulled all that stuff out because not every property has a POA or a condo. So it was ridiculous to have all that information in there. If you download that form, I can probably find it here somewhere in this mess, but if you download the form for on NVAR site, it's 5 pages long that summarizes the statute, but that's 5 pages. The statute is actually 37 pages long. Okay, so please don't go calling somebody and saying, well, the contract says, and I hear that all the time. So go to paragraph 8 of your contract for a second. Let's clarify this, okay? POA Act. Seller represents the property is or is not located within a development that is subject to the Virginia POA Act. Section 55(1)(1808) of the Act requires the following language. Of the Act, the whole entire Act is in play here, not just paragraph 55(1)(1808), which says, after I receive my documents, I have the right to void within 3 days. But there used to be language in this page and a half they pulled out that people never bothered to read. It was like the second to the last sentence. And it said, I have the right to void anytime up until I receive the documents or a notice that they will not be available, or 3 days after or 6 days after if postmarked. But now you'll see the language in here in paragraph 8 and 9 that allows for the additional extension of up to 4 days because that's required language. Okay, so I get that all the time. I get it in my classes. I get calls from brokers. You name it. I get calls from people about the POA Act. And sometime, if you would just Google 55.1/1800 and read from section 55(1)(1800 to 1837, there's some interesting stuff in that POA and Condo Act. Okay. Any other questions about that? Because I want to move on to the exclusive right to lease listing agreement. Okay, so find Form K-1281. I want to go over a few changes to this lease because of the change in the statute. This was a previous change to the form, but I want to make sure everybody understands a few paragraphs of this because these are ones I get questions about quite often. Page 1 of 9 of that exclusive right to lease listing agreement. The state of Virginia changed its fair housing law July 1st. Okay. They added sexual orientation, gender identity, veteran status, and source of income. Now, source of income had a caveat to it. So if you look at paragraph 5, lease terms, it says, as of date, landlord 1 owns more than 4 rental dwelling units in the Commonwealth, or 2 owns individually or through a business entity more than a 10% interest in more than 4 rental dwelling units in the Commonwealth. If the answer to that is yes, then the landlord must take Section 8 applications and process them and not turn them down because of Section 8. Okay? Now, if no, the landlord will or will not consider applications from prospective tenants who qualify for housing voucher programs. So you can still take them. You know, and the funny thing is, everybody considered Section 8 bad for some reason before, but now I'm hearing people that have Section 8 tenants say, hey, I'm getting my rent every month. Okay, isn't that funny? In a time period, well, a lot of people lost their jobs and can't afford rent, right? So in Virginia, 5 or more properties, okay, then they do have to consider the Section 8. The statute goes on to say they have 15 days to process the Section 8. If Section 8 doesn't process it within 15 days, then they can move on. But source of income is now a protected category in the state of Virginia. Okay. Now, I want you to go to page 2 of 9, paragraph 8. Let's clarify this. Premises are subject to Virginia Real Estate Landlord Tenant Act, and broker shall only provide a Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. All properties in the state of Virginia that are rentals are bound by the Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. There is no more common law lease. That's why it was removed. Our statute changed. There used to be an exemption. If it was, more than 3, I had the right to opt out. You no longer have that right to opt out. All properties are bound by the Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. So if you as an agent use a landlord's lease and it's in conflict with Virginia Landlord Tenant Act, the judge is going to defer to the Virginia Landlord Tenant Act. So it doesn't matter what's in that lease. Okay. Now I want you to go to page 4 of 9. This is where the change is in the form this go around, and it deals with coming soon status, right? And we really discussed that last week. But basically, if you put a property, a sign, or any type of advertising on a property that you have listed, you have 24 hours to put it into the Bright MLS, okay? Period. Okay. If you're going to allow showings, you could put it in Bright MLS coming soon status, 21 days, up to 21 days, no showings, no anything. Okay. But any type of advertising, it has to be in the system now. I also want to go to page 5 of 9. Not a new change, but I get this question quite often. Broker compensation. Landlord shall pay broker in cash compensation. This is a total amount of compensation. Okay. If you put a half a month rent and then you go to the next page and you offer tenant agent compensation of a half a month rent, then you're working for nothing.
Right.
Okay.
This is pretty common.
I know, that's what I'm covering. So Emma can attest to this. We see it, right? Even in a listing agreement, we see it. So whatever your total is, what you get and what you're giving away is the total. Okay. And I know Emmett sees that probably more than I do because he reviews a lot of listings, etc.
Yeah, and when you point it out, they decide, oh no, I really would like to make some money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give them a chance to fix it up.
Can you explain that again? So for the compensation, it's the amount that you will pay.
So if you only put in that agreement say you put, just for instance, a half a month rent total, and then on the next page, you're offering a half a month rent to the co-op agent, then you get nothing because you just gave it all away. So total compensation, okay, it's not half to you and a half to them. It's a total amount of compensation and then what you're going to offer, just like on a listing agreement. Okay, so if you go to page 5 of 9, okay, if you're going to give a half a month away to the co-op broker, how much do you want to get paid?
Hopefully
A
a
half a
whole
month?
month. Yeah.
Okay, so if you want a half a month, then the total compensation is 1 month, right? You're going to keep half. You go to page 6 of 9, the tenant agency compensation would be the other half. Okay, so the total, if you give the total amount you receive away to the co-op broker, you get nothing. Plus you owe a fee to Fairfax Realty. So you're actually taking money out of your pocket.
Yeah, you forget about that $295 flat fee. If you don't charge it to the client, it gets charged to you,
Yes.
right? It's got to get charged to somebody.
Okay, everybody all right? That answered? Same way with your listing agreement. It's whatever you're giving them plus what you want is the total. Okay, let's go
I have
to,
another question.
okay,
Tenant agency compensation note, compensation may be shown by a percentage of the monthly lease price, defined a dollar or no for compensation. Can I put specific amount?
yes.
Okay.
It can be a dollar amount or it can be a percentage of the month. Okay, and make sure that it's per month, right? If you put 50, and I see this, don't do this, 50%, 50% of the lease amount. Okay, spell it out. Okay, be careful how you do it. Okay, we'll do another session on the lease in the future. How to make sure you fill that out right. Maybe I can do one in conjunction with Emmett, because he sees a lot of it also. Okay. Now let's go to lease VRLTA form K1354. Everybody find it? I want to go to paragraph 5 on page 2 of 14. This is a change to our statute.
Sorry, which form again?
It's form K1354. It is the
Okay,
lease VRLTA.
thank you.
Okay. Our statute changed this past year. If you look at the second sentence, for rent payment received by the landlord after the 5th day of the month, landlord may charge tenant the lesser of 10% of the total rent or 10% of the remaining balance due and owed by the tenant. So a lot of tenants' income has been cut. They're trying the best they can do. Your rent was $1,000. They sent you 500 of it before the 5th day of the month. They still owe you 500. Your late fee would only be based on the 500 they did not pay, not the total lease. Okay, so it's the remaining balance owed, not the total. That's a change by our statute. I want you to go to paragraph 29 on page 10. This is very, very important. Okay, we're running into this problem because tenants are not moving because of COVID. Okay, if landlord is unable to deliver possession of premises to tenant at lease start, landlord shall not be liable to tenant for any damages other than to rebate any rent by tenant for such portion of the term during which premises are not delivered to the tenant. If landlord cannot deliver possession of the premises or provide tenant with alternative residential dwelling unit acceptable to tenant within 15 days after lease start, then lease may be terminated by either landlord or tenant by giving notice to the other party as provided herein. I've seen situations where the tenants bought another house, but the house isn't ready. And they said, well, we're not leaving, because they know you have to go through an eviction process, but you've already leased the property out. Okay. So point this out to your clients if they're tenants that are looking to move into a property. It might be 15 days past the day where they were supposed to be in the property before they can even say, I want damages or anything else, because they agreed to it.
Mhm.
So unless it's a vacant property, you could, these things might not line up, but that is in there to protect you and your landlord. I want you to go to paragraph 34. On page 11. Are you automatically entitled to compensation if the tenant that you brought into the property and the landlord get together later and work out a deal where the tenant buys the property? Well, it's addressed in paragraph 34. Parties are notified there may be a commission due under a separate brokerage agreement if tenant should purchase premises. This paragraph does not give the tenant an option or right to purchase premises. What are they talking about? It might be in your right to lease agreement. But if you don't have it in your right to lease agreement that you will be paid compensation of X% if the tenant buys the property, you are not due any money. Okay.
So that is not already written in, right? You'd have to write it in yourself.
Right. Make sure it's written in and it's agreed to. Okay. Now, in paragraph 39, this is an addition to our statute. Okay. It's on page 12. Statement of tenant rights and responsibilities pursuant to section 55.1, 1204 of the Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. Tenant hereby acknowledges receipt of the Virginia Statement of Tenants' Rights and Responsibilities, which is attached. It is a separate form. You can get it from VAR's forms library. Okay. If that is not attached to this, your tenant cannot be evicted until they receive this notice.
Oh.
Okay. So NVAR just included it right in our lease. Okay. But you have to make sure that it's attached. You okay with that?
So when we sign a lease with somebody, we have to get a separate copy of that and give it to them at the same time?
Same time. Okay. And they're acknowledging receipt of it. If you did not give it to them, then your landlords can't evict them even after this moratorium is over until they receive that notice.
Okay.
It's required by our statute.
So Larry, you said the NVAR form has it embedded in?
No, it does not embed it. It's an addition.
Oh.
They have the form. You'd have to download it and make sure it's attached to your lease.
Okay, it's a separate form in the NVAR library.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So Larry, then this will be part of the lease, like an addendum, and tenants and everybody has to sign on that?
The tenant, yes, it would be a place for the tenant to acknowledge it, because it's not a lease addendum. It's more of a notice.
Okay.
Okay. It's required language front, or you could just go to Virginia and download their form if you want. They're just making sure that you remember you need to do that. Okay. So you can Google Virginia Statement of Tenants' Rights and Responsibilities on the Tenant Landlord Act, section 55.1, 1204. All NVAR wanted to do was remind the landlord and you as their agent that that has to be done. Okay.
So, when you give them that form, is there some place for them to sign that they received it?
I haven't used it yet, but I'm assuming at the bottom of it, there is a place for them to acknowledge. If not, just, have them do it.
And that is effective when?
That was effective July 1.
Oh, so if you did a lease prior to July 1, do I need to go back and do that now?
I would, yes.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
Larry, do you think a landlord could take action against an agent because they failed to include that notice?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's a landlord duty. Okay.
But you had to be the one as the agent to include the form.
Well, you should have made sure they knew about it. If they wanted to go to DPOR, they could probably go to DPOR, but not a lawsuit type thing, I wouldn't think.
Okay, somebody will probably bring that up.
Yeah. Okay.
So Larry, if we are writing a lease now, so that lease should include, but I thought all these forms are effective January 1st, right?
No, I said I'm going through other things here also that became law. Okay. So that's the reason I said the only part of this lease that changed from what's current law is coming soon. But I'm pointing out all these other problems that have been coming up with this and legal stuff I want you to know in case you missed my legal update session.
Okay.
Back in July.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. And all it's saying here is that remember to do it, agent. Please remember to do this. Okay. Because your landlord can't evict anybody unless the people have received that. And there's additional language if it's a Section 8 that has to be in it if it's not in there that tells the Section 8 person where they can go to get assistance in case of a threat of an eviction, whatever. Okay. Now, I want to do a brief review before we look at briefly at the new home sales addendum form. I want to do a brief summary of the discussion of the appraisal contingency paragraphs, conventional versus VA, FHA, USDA. Okay. So if you pull out your appraisal contingency notice, form K1349, okay, K1349, you'll notice at the bottom of this form, they added for FHA, VA, USDA appraisal contingency only. The appraisal is less than the sales price and buyer elects not to proceed with consummation of this contract. Please see written statement. Buyer declares the contract void. Now, the reason they did this is the first paragraph of the appraisal contingency under VA, FHA, USDA, there's automatic right of voiding a contract if the appraisal comes back lower than the sales price. Okay, period. All right. The appraisal contingency notice did not reflect that. It only reflected the options under conventional. Now, under a conventional contract, if the appraisal comes back low, there is no automatic right of voiding the contract. We go into the negotiating period. So under conventional, if the seller would agree to lower the price down to the appraised value, then we go forward. VA, FHA, USDA, not so. Okay, they could still void. Now here's the danger. With this new language, the purchaser under VA, USDA, etc., has the right to counter and do the negotiating. So if you go to Form K-1339,
Larry, if I didn't check this paragraph, do I have the rights to negotiate?
you lost me there. If you didn't do what?
If I didn't check this paragraph for FHA, VDA, if I didn't check this box, do I have the right to negotiate if the appraisal will be higher?
Yes. And that's what we're going to take a look at right now. So if you pull out Form K-1339, okay, it is the VA financing contingency addendum. And you go to page 3 of 4. Okay. You'll see number 4 there. The appraisal is less than the sales price. Buyer elects not to proceed with consummation of this contract. Buyer may void this contract by delivering the seller appraisal contingency notice, including a copy of the written statement. So you would send over this appraisal contingency notice along with the written statement showing that there is no, that you're voiding the contract. Okay. That's what this a new paragraph on this appraisal contingency notice form is about. You do not have this paragraph in conventional. Okay. Now, or they could choose the box on the appraisal contingency notice. FHA, VA, USDA could choose the box that says the appraisal is less than the sales price and buyer elects to negotiate a mutually acceptable new sales price. Buyer's proposed sales price is X amount of dollars. And you attach the written statement showing the appraised value. Now, the contract does not allow the price to be less than the appraised value. So if you're going to negotiate, you can negotiate down to the appraisal value, or maybe the buyer still wants the property, but they figure, well, the seller should share in this a little bit, so I'm willing to meet them halfway. Well, the buyer could say, the appraisal was 10,000 less. I'm willing to give half if you give half. It's just that now they have to have that money in cash to be able to settle. Now, under this FHA and VA and USDA, if your buyer chooses paragraph 5 and checks on the appraisal contingency notice, you've got to stay on top of it. They have the absolute right to void under paragraph 4, but if they choose to negotiate, okay, it says they elect to negotiate a mutually acceptable new sales price. Buyer's appraisal contingency notice shall include a copy of the written statement and buyer's proposed sales price, which shall not be lower than the appraised value. That's the same language in the conventional, right? So paragraph 5 is a little different. If they don't void under 4, they choose 5, do it right. Negotiating period. In the event of this subparagraph 5B, the party shall have until 9 p.m. Give yourself time to negotiate. I've seen people put 1 or 2 days. How in the world can you do that on a long weekend or people are out of town or whatever? So I would like to see 7 days for a negotiating period, but whatever you can get. After buyer's delivery of the appraisal contingency notice to negotiate a mutually acceptable new sales price. But here's the key to it. I'm not going to read that whole paragraph. It has to be in writing by 9 p.m. on the day specified. Okay. If not, okay, you're going to be moving into the buyer's election period. Okay. So if by 9 p.m. on the day of negotiating, we do not have a written addendum lowering the price, now your buyer, and you have to stay on top of this, If at the end of the negotiating period, the parties are unable to reach an agreement, buyer shall have the option to void this contract by delivering notice to seller by 9 p.m. X number of days following the end of the negotiating period. Otherwise, the appraisal contingency shall be removed and this contract remain in full force and effect at the original sales price, which means if you and a VA, FHA, USDA contract choose to negotiate and your buyer does not void the contract in that buyer's election period, they've lost their right that they had automatic right to void under paragraph 4. You can't mess it up. And I would not use the appraisal contingency notice at that point to void. I would use NVAR's notice to void agreement and a release of contract. Everybody with me on this. They have the right to choose to negotiate, but then they have to void. They don't have an automatic right out of the contract, which they have if you choose paragraph 4 when they get their appraisal.
You meant after the negotiation period, we have the right to void, but we have to send them a note.
Yes, and if you don't, your buyer has now decided they're going forward and they're going to have the cash difference. So if it's an FHA contract, they probably went FHA for one or two reasons. Their credit wasn't the greatest, or they don't have a lot of money. And if that appraisal came in $10,000 less and you want to try to negotiate, okay, and they don't void because we can't get the price down to the appraised value, your buyer is going to be in default. So make sure you go over the gamble they're taking if they're going to negotiate under those other three. Conventional, it's an automatic. If they lower the price down, you're pretty much going to the table. You don't have the right to void. But under these others, by law, the buyer is protected.
Hey, Larry, I had a case just this morning, actually, an agent who his clients made an offer on conventional because they wanted to win the contract, and then later decided they want to go to FHA. And but they wanted, and on the conventional, they waived the appraisal contingency, and they want to waive the appraisal contingency on FHA, but FHA
doesn't allow it.
doesn't allow that.
No.
And
So
I said, number one, you got to have an addendum that the seller would agree to allow you to switch financing.
Correct.
And they may, and they may say, the heck no. You know,
I would say no.
Yeah. But
Okay.
but what I see a number of cases lately where the buyer gives away a lot to win the contract, like say home inspection contingencies and stuff, but then they still want to ask for things to be fixed. You know?
Yeah.
They already gave it up.
Yeah, that's yeah. As a matter of courtesy, before we void our contract, will you do this? Yeah. Now that gets in my craw like you wouldn't believe. Okay, so I want to now just quickly take a look at the new home sales addendum form. Now, I want to warn you, I would not, as an agent, have my buyer do this without legal advice. Okay? Me personally, I'm going to make sure they understand they should have this reviewed. Because most agents, this is, just getting our regular sales contract straight without having to worry about this other stuff. Okay. But beginning January 1, you use your regular sales contract and this addendum form. You won't have that new home contract any longer. That goes away January 1. Okay. Now, it says here, resale provisions deleted because this is a new property. So you're going to be removing from the contract paragraph 4, 10, 11, 13, and 18, which makes sense, right? Settlement will be anytime within the next 720 days, according to this new home sales contract. Okay. The seller must deliver, if they don't deliver the property within 720 days, then your person has a right to void. Okay. So I want them to have this thing reviewed, all right? Property maintenance and condition, that paragraph would not be part of it because the condition is going to be covered by the new home laws in Virginia. Access to the property. You're not going to, it's going to be stated dates and times you can go into the property, right? Personal property and fixtures, you have an additional optional form here. It's not optional, but your options form that you'll be doing that, okay?
Which form are you talking about, Larry?
Say what?
Oh, which form are you reviewing?
I'm Form K1391, New Home Sales Addendum. I'm not reading it yet. I'm just telling you what's in it.
Okay.
Everybody find it?
I found it now.
Okay. So there is a new home sales contract right now. That's what you would use until January 1. When would you use this form? Well, I can think of a couple of times. You got a builder that builds 1 or 2 homes per year. They may not have their own contract, okay? So you use it. Or you have somebody that's going to buy a property, tear it down, build a new home. You're going to be representing them in the sale of the new home. Well, this addendum will help you work your way through that because that party that you're first helping probably doesn't have any kind of a contract. You go to a new homes project, any builder you want to choose, they've got their own language and their own contracts. And their contract, if you read it, it says, what you're looking at might not be what I build you. That's it in a nutshell, you know. I walked in, I like everything to the right. I go from my home and everything's to the left. Well, that's tough, you know. I have the right to do whatever I want. At least this is a little bit tighter, right? It talks about improvements, options, and or equipment included. So the seller shall construct and or install all improvements in conformance with the drawings, specs, options, and plans attached hereto, incorporated herein, is called the project. So within X number of days after settlement, if you choose this box, seller at seller's expense shall have the property inspected for radon, because they can't inspect for radon until there's occupancy. So this makes sense. Until the property is actually sealed up, there would be no radon because it would keep going out in the air somewhere, all right? So after settlement, this paragraph just says the seller will have the test done. If there's a higher level than established by EPA is acceptable, they'll bring it down to that acceptable level by remediation. And this is a misconception by a lot of people. The house shows that it has a high incidence of radon, more than what, 4.0 picolarity, whatever that stuff is. And they ask for remediation. That doesn't mean there won't be any radon. All remediation says is they have to put a system in that will bring it down to an acceptable level. Okay. So I've seen people remodel a home and seal it up tight. There was no radon in the house before, but now the house is sealed up tight and the radon couldn't get out anymore. So then you have a high incidence of radon. So I always recommend anybody I know, if you're going to redo your home, you're going to tighten it up, have a radon test done, factor in maybe needing a radon mediation system. You don't want to subject your family to that. And if you're going to put those granite countertops in, granite is what? Comes out of the ground. It may very well have radon emitting from it for a while. So you may be bringing radon into your house. Okay. You put new cabinets in. You might have volatile organic chemicals emitting from that. So do some testing, but the builder has to do it here. Paragraph 3, construction. Yes,
Larry, quick question on that. That granite countertops and all those things remodeling. Let's say, so when we bring in, you're asking to verify the radon level, but that radon, because of those granite things, will be a continuous thing or only one time thing?
well, they eventually, all the gas escapes and it won't be there, but you know, just be wary of when you're redoing your whole home, have the radon test, because radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States. I know we say you don't really need to test and all, but it, you know, for some people it literally can be a matter of life or death. Test doesn't cost that much. Remediation doesn't cost that much. Do it. You know, and probably the new homes, most new homes now are built with barriers and all to help prevent that, but you still need to have it tested. So this paragraph says they need to have it tested. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
The construction, paragraph 3, shall complete the project on or about. So time of the essence is not in here. I've sent a note to the board about this new form because they did not remove paragraph 37 from, or 35, I think it is. Time is the essence from the contract. So it's sort of contradictory. Time of the essence is still in that paragraph, but removed here. That's, I guess, since they're right, you know, everybody's agreeing here, it would probably override it, but I want them to address that issue. Seller shall complete project on or about whatever date, and seller shall promptly deliver notice to buyer that the project is complete. Now, I've had this question in the past, so here's the definition. And remember, when a word is in quotation marks and capitalized, it sets a definition. Project is complete when the seller finishes construction and or installation of the project in conformance with this contract. A certificate of occupancy has been issued and the property is fit for habitation and functional for ordinary dwelling use. Completion date means the date seller delivers notice to buyer that the project is complete. So you need all those items to send that notice. Now, here's the killer paragraph, right? It says, buyer acknowledges that delays can be caused by things outside of the control, right? Outside of the control of the builder. Okay, so work stoppages, municipal approvals and permits, strikes, lockouts, weather, availability of labor, materials. We're running into a real problem with building materials. They can't make them fast enough because people are not working because of COVID, etc. Even seeing this problem with walkthrough items, okay? And that's why we have the COVID-19 addendum that we have attached to your regular sales contract, okay? So the buyer understands that this could be delayed. So on the next page, notwithstanding the foregoing, if for any reason the project is not complete within 730 days, I thought it was 720, but it makes sense, 2 years, or you can negotiate a shorter period from the date of ratification, in the buyer's sole discretion, they may send a notice to void the contract, but they get, you know, then the builder's out of it without penalty. So you might have to wait 2 years for that new home. Just how big of a hurry were you for this? And unless you're paying cash, the other problem with this is what will interest rates be in 2 years? Okay, you're basing the purchase of this home at 3.5%. What if 2 years from now it's 8%?
Yeah.
You know, well, now your buyer is going to what? Be in default if they can't settle, because it says here under paragraph 4, settlement, make full settlement within 15 days after completion date. So you have to have your financing all ready to go 15 days after. So if you're dealing with a smaller builder, Okay, unlike you know, Pulte or are they still around or whoever? I can't. You know, I don't know who the builders are anymore. You got to be ready to go. So it's almost, to me, you should be a cash purchaser when it's for a new home. Okay. Now, the rest of paragraph 4 is RESPA. That can't be changed, or RESA and RESPA. You have the right to choose the title company, buyer, and etc. So we're not going to go through that. Paragraph 5, the seller's right to make changes. Okay. The seller reserves the right to make changes to the project at seller's cost and expense with advance written notice to the buyer. Such changes are necessary as a result of unforeseen site conditions, unavailability of the materials, etc. So the builder can make all these changes without your permission. Okay. Yeah. Great elevation. Your house didn't have steps, but now it's going to, etc. Okay. Countertops, flooring, etc. So read through that, make sure they understand. I've already used my hour up. I'm going to wait till the next session and start out with this new home sales addendum. You can flip through it if you have questions. Talk to your managers or shoot me an email. And we are not going to be meeting again until after the first of the year. They will be putting a notice out. I was asked to put out a notice also that the offices will be closed December 24th and 25th. You'll be able to use them, I guess, but it's a holiday for the company. Okay. And I have something here in chat. Could you give instructions on how to find previously recorded Zoom sessions? Nestor puts those up as he gets time to edit them. In the email that you got for this session, there is a link to go to those, go to Zoom and watch those sessions. So just the email that you receive about this, click on the link, it will take you there. Or I guess you could Google Larry Anderson, Fairfax Realty. It would take you there. Okay. And he does have the sessions dated.
Larry, I have a question. What
Okay.
was the number and or name of the form that you were reviewing when we first got on the call, where you talked about the extending the POA time to 4 days? Was that
Well,
a
that
separate
was,
form to do that?
that's a separate form. Okay. I don't have it here in front of me, but it's in VAR's forms library. But what I was talking about, it has been added to paragraph 39 of your sales contract. Extension for review period for condo and resale. So you can find that on the forms library. I'm sorry, I don't have it laid out here in front of me.
No problem. I just wanted
Okay.
to, I know you were talking about it and it was in a different, so it was in a sales contract. What paragraph is it?
Paragraph 8 and 9. POA,
Okay, thank you.
POA and condo. And once again, our statute's the same for both. Okay. It's just they call one package one thing and another package another thing. Okay.
Right.
Well, everyone,
Thank
thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a nice holiday. And look forward to seeing you guys again after the first of the year. And we will go back to Mondays and Wednesdays after the first of the year.
Okay, have a nice holiday, Larry.
Okay, thank you everybody for
Thank
attending.
you.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.